Hi. So I was just going on YouTube. I was telling my husband, side note, if you have a business or you're just starting out, I tried to do a travel business for about a year. And my friend told me, she's like, when you're first starting out, the first year, you're not going to have much business. But the next year, you will. And the thing that helped me the most, or the platforms that helped me the most, were TikTok and Yelp. There were, some videos that were watched on YouTube, but maybe 40, maybe a little more than 40. So not much, but I got some referrals from Yelp for sure. And like I said, TikTok. And it helps that TikTok recycles the videos. The point is, that's not why I'm on here. I'm on here to add an addendum to my video from 3 years ago. So 3 years ago, I was talking about how being back in Montana was great and I had no issues. 3 years later, I'm living in Washington. And I think since moving here, I've realized that there were things that I went through that were really hurtful. I definitely had an amazing tribe, and I still do. I have great friends in Montana. Montana itself is not the issue, but there are just things that I went through that were really difficult, dealing with microaggressions, dealing with macroaggressions, dealing with racism. It was hard. And I lived there again because I loved hiking. I loved how close, I was to the outdoors. That was a sustaining quality. Like the fact that it was maybe 10 minutes to go to a trailhead kept me there. The beauty, the sense of community. I think you can build a sense of community, but you need to be intentional. I don't think it's just like a Montana thing, but I think it's partly the culture of the Pacific Northwest. You just kind of have to get into people's hearts and really be intentional about bonding. And so I was able to do that with friends through workout classes and volunteering, things like that. But I think since moving here, I realized that it has been really helpful to be around more ethnic diversity, because I think after a while being in Montana, I was starting to feel like, oh, like my body doesn't look like other people. Sometimes my interests aren't the same or whatever. And I think it has been helpful to have some shared experiences, partly from just being around more minorities. And it's nothing against, being in Montana, because I think I just was met with a lot of diversity of thought, a lot of diversity in other ways. That was super powerful. And we also were getting connected with different communities, like through dance and things like that. The point is, I just don't want to mislead people. So if you are a minority and you're thinking about moving to Montana, I think Montana is a great place to live. I lived in Missoula. I felt very safe in Missoula, but I had a girlfriend that was graduating in Billings. I haven't been to Billings very often, and I just had a lot of hesitations and reservations about going to Billings. And if you know people that live in Billings, I think that's great, go off of that. But yeah, I mentioned that to a couple friends, my hesitation to a couple friends who grew up in Montana, who lived in Montana, and were minorities and non-minorities. And yeah, the general consensus was like, with our political climate right now, maybe going to Billings isn't a great idea. Again, like I said, I don't have much exposure there. I think I only stayed there once, and that's as I was passing through on a road trip to Colorado. So no shade to Billings, but I did have some hesitations there. Missoula, on the other hand, it's a college town. There's a lot of community events. I recently went back and visited some friends in May and had a great experiences. I was like, this is why I love Missoula. I love that all my friends, or not all, but I love that so many of my friends are here. I love that I can get outside really easily. I love that, it's just beautiful. So I feel like I'm being redundant. But I didn't have any negative experiences. I think the things that were hard for me though was, people not shaking my hands, like all of a sudden them putting their hands in their pockets, or people being weird about me using the bathroom before them, or just like not acknowledging me if like they were talking in a group, just like not making eye contact with me. Um, yeah, yeah, or some people just like flat out said like, "Oh, FYI, I'm racist." So I was like, "Okay, thanks." So yeah, there were these just different experiences that were tough, and that's not everything. Those are just the things I can mention on the top of my head. So I don't really want to deter people from moving to Missoula. If you're a minority and you're thinking like, oh, like I'm Black, how will I be treated? I think you'll be treated fine. Maybe you won't stay for 13 years like I did, but I think it's a really great place. It's really lovely. But I think there are some situations that you might encounter, or maybe you won't. I think something I've realized is if I were to move back to Montana, I would have to go back as a different person, in the sense that I would have to be more committed to speaking to racism, or speaking up about just different weirdnesses, weird interactions, and just say, oh, hey, like, what's going on here? Or, just drawing attention to things. So, yeah, if I were to move back, then I think that's something that I'm realizing I will need to have in my toolbox, so that I don't start developing a feeling of inferiority, or a feeling of, yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, like an inferiority complex. And I think that's the other thing. So there are a lot of intelligent people all over, but Missoula is known for having highly educated population that is choosing to, maybe make less money, or not work in their profession, or not work in their career, because they want to live and recreate in Missoula. And so I think that was the other thing at different times, was just feeling like, because I don't always communicate maybe in the same ways that some people, they're communicated, or as clearly or articulately, I think that was another thing that I just felt really insecure about. And thankfully I was met with a lot of kindness, and people figured out like how I communicated, and didn't give me a hard time about it. But there were also plenty of people that did give me a hard time about the way I communicated, or corrected my speech, which wasn't helpful. It just wasn't helpful. So I might at some point record another message and say, okay, now we're moving back to Montana, and this is how it's going, or we decided not to move back to Montana. I don't know, but I just think at this time in my life, I'm grateful to be in Washington. I'm grateful to just kind of have a break from the culture too. There is a message, or like an understanding, like, oh yeah, Montana is the last best place, which isn't true. I think other places also think that. I've heard people think that about Texas as well. But I think it's helpful to be exposed to different places and different cultures, and realize there's a lot of great places in the States, and there are a lot of great places in the world. And I think it's great to have a pride about a place, like, wow, this place is so amazing. It's so beautiful. It's so whatever, fill in the blank. But I think you just have to be careful that you don't get into like superior or superiority language. I think that's where there's just like a message that's like an undertone that's communicated, where it's like, wait a minute. So I think coming out to Washington, when my husband and I were driving out here, we're like, Washington's also really beautiful. And I think that was part of why we moved, was just thinking, oh, like, there's other great places. Yes, Montana is great. We're on like Team Montana, but there's great places, outside of Montana, and let's explore those places too. So yeah, hopefully this is helpful. And by all means, I think have your own experience, explore your own journey, see where that takes you. Proceeding with kindness was something that helped me a lot. Focusing on the people that wanted me to be in Montana and not focusing as much on the people that didn't want me to be there was something that helped me a ton. But also being in the mountains, I found an acceptance there, where I was just like, yeah, maybe people won't accept me, but I always felt accepted in the mountains. And I also always felt free to, explore and just have a good time. And I usually was met with kindness, from other hikers. I can't think of any negative experiences I had in the mountains. People maybe just are happier when they're hiking and happier on trails. I don't know. But yeah, so I don't know. Just wanted to reach out in case there's people that are like, she said it was going to be amazing. And what is this? So it's like, okay, we're all different. But yeah, I also just wanted to just mention, there were things that were also not positive. So, I'm going to go because I have an appointment. We're going to a bubble experience in Bellevue. Looking forward to it. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and yeah, a great experience if you visit Montana. Okay, bye.